Good morning and welcome. I can't tell you how happy my colleagues and I are to welcome you all here today to really what is a very significant moment in the history of the Concord Museum as we reopen our newly renovated buildings and officially marry them to the Anna and Neil Rasmussen Education Center, which we opened last year at this time. We were honored at that occasion by the presence of Representative Corey Atkins and Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas, and we are equally so today with two newly elected officials, Representative Tammy Govea and Congresswoman Laurie Trahan. And we are also very pleased to be joined this morning by Concord's new town manager, Stephen Crane. I'm outnumbered up here because all three of them are born and bred in Lowell. And I can't lay claim to that, but we are. And we have a whole group of students from Lowell currently in the Rasmussen Education Center, and some of them are going to join us in a few moments. With so many politicians here and the media, actually, one of our colleagues brought her baby in, so we have plenty of photo opportunities afterwards. I should say one of the things we're most proudest of here is our partnership with the Lowell Public Schools. And we have a free bus program that brings thousands of students to Concord every year, including every fifth grade student from the Lowell Public Schools for our amazing hands-on history programs. And a moment after the ribbon cutting, you'll see on display right behind me in our first gallery this beautiful copper tea kettle that Louisa May Alcott used when she was serving as a nurse during the Civil War, before she began her legendary writing career. And I love to tell the story of the young kindergarten student from Lowell who was looking very intently at this beautiful shiny kettle, and he asked his teacher, "What happens if you rub it?" We, of course, want to pause to thank all of those who made this reopening possible, including the museum's past and present leadership, our generous donors, many of whom are here today, and our talented staff, as well as the architects who designed the new education center and this renovated space. Our builders, Hutter Construction, Adam and Caleb, are here. They're like members of our family. They've been working and living here. The Hutter is based in New Hampshire, so they've been commuting here from Rindge, Jaffrey area every day. And with the town manager present, as well as the chair of the select board, I especially want to thank all of the town officials who helped with the planning, execution, and protection of the staff and this property during this multi-year project. They were wonderful to work with. So many of the artifacts on display in our new exhibit speak to me, but none more than the first that you'll see when you enter the gallery. It's a powder horn that was owned by a gentleman named Abner Hosmer. He was 23 years old, but he never got to, and took that powder horn with him to the North Bridge, but he never got to use it because he was one of the few who lost their lives on that bridge. The word nation shares a Latin root with nativity, and in part what connects us all today as people is the shared sacrifice of those who've gone before us, who fought for the liberties that we enjoy today. And it could be said that a new birth of freedom truly was conceived in this town on that fateful day in 1775. I can hear the school kids from Lowell. Our curator, David Wood, paired that powder horn with a quote from Edward Emerson, who at age 17, along with others, left Concord on April 19, 1861, to fight in the Civil War, in part to ensure that African Americans who were enslaved at the time and later women had the same rights as all citizens of our country. Oh, good. Senator Barrett, please come join us. I introduced you earlier, so Senator Michael Barrett, and you will speak right after Tam. Okay. Anyway, as he paired that powder horn with a quote from Edward Emerson, who was 17 years old. Along with others, he left Concord on April 19, 1861, again to fight in the Civil War. There was a sense of jubilation in the town as they headed off, unaware of the many years of horror and destruction to come. Well, all of this is evocative to me because it reminds me of my own father, who graduated from Marlborough High School and at age 17 signed up, enlisted in the Army to fight in the Battle of the Bulge, the last major German offensive in World War II, perhaps freedom's darkest hour. It's stories of courage by ordinary men like these or by the extraordinary individuals such as Louisa Alcott, Waldo Emerson, Henry Thoreau, who changed the course of history through their writings, that give us strength to confront the challenges of our time. I'm especially proud as we open these 2 new permanent galleries, and we have a dozen more to come over the next 2 years, that we have tried to not sugarcoat Concord's history. The very first gallery behind me holds a mirror of a black man who was enslaved in this town, reminding people that there were slaves in Concord at the time of the Revolution. Though his story is inspirational in itself because he emancipated himself in part by service in the Revolutionary Army. And while the other exhibit you'll see, called The People of Musketaquid, celebrates the native peoples who lived on this land and the continuing indigenous presence in our Commonwealth, undergirding that story we all know is a more sordid past that divorced those communities from the land they once cherished and thrived on. I'm a fan of the poetry of Robert Frost, whose sense of human tragedy, it was once said, fortified him against self-deception and easy consolation. I have been, he wrote, one acquainted with the night. And because he knew the midnight as well as the high noon, because he understood the ordeal as well as the triumph of the human spirit, he gave his age strength with which to overcome despair. Unlike my father, I never defended our nation on a battlefield, but my son toured this extraordinary exhibit yesterday, and I thank you for joining me in heeding this museum's call to defend and preserve Concord's history, the lessons of which we bequeath to the next generation who follow us. As we all know, we're living through difficult and divisive times in our country, but we can all unite behind our founding ideals and the stories of the brave men and women who gave their lives and talents so we might achieve a more perfect union. It's my hope that the work of this museum and the exhibit you're about to experience will inspire each of you and all of those who visit, giving us strength to overcome despair and binding us as one nation, offering liberty and justice to all. We will now hear from Stephen Crane, Tammy Govea, Michael Barrett, and lastly, Congressman Laurie Trahan, who we especially thank for joining us today. You honor us, Congresswoman Trahan, with your presence. Stephen.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation to speak. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here, not only here at the Concord Museum, but also to be the town manager of Concord. Every morning I think about how fortunate I am to be here. It's a great gig. I am lucky to be here and happy to serve such a wonderful community. I've been, in trying to familiarize myself with Concord, I've been kind of getting around meeting people, and one of my new friends in the community gave me a copy of Historic Concord and the Lexington Fight, which I've been reading. And I remember reading some of the early portions of the Revolutionary era and kind of coming into work thinking about it. I was thinking about, the lessons I was learning from it. I came in and I actually wrote this note, and on it I wrote, education, arts, literature, culture, environmental stewardship, historic preservation, community engagement. Those were my takeaways from Concord in the Revolutionary era. And it's pretty easy to see that those things are still a fundamental part of Concord's DNA, and one of the things that makes Concord a really special place. And so I think this space and this place do great tribute to that, but I think it's the people of Concord who are out there living and honoring and paying tribute to this community that really make it great. And so I congratulate you on your achievement and enjoy the event.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tammy Govea, State Representative for the 14th Middlesex District. And for those of you just who might not know, it includes Concord, half of Acton, a couple precincts in Chelmsford, and all of Carlisle. And it really is my honor and privilege to be here with all of you today to celebrate the reopening of the renovations that occurred here at the Concord Museum. I want to thank Tom and the board and all the staff, the town leaders and donors for making today possible. So I was here Wednesday night for the opening reception. It was a beautiful reception, really in awe of this space. And one of the things that struck me immediately is the mirror that's right behind us. For a museum of this kind, under the leadership of the board and staff, and you heard some of the comments that Tom made in his opening remarks, for me, this mirror symbolizes how when we come into this space, we reflect on the legacies of our past and the opportunity and responsibility for all of us to work together to really create that more perfect union so that we have a just, sustainable, fair society for everybody. And so it's really fitting to me that we have this first mirror, and then also the mirror when you go into the gallery that was owned by a slave who got his freedom by fighting in the war. So just really proud to be part of this legacy, part of this work together, and really just congratulations, and look forward to more openings with all the other galleries and all the other spaces that will be opening. Thank you.
Happy to be here as well. State Senator Michael Barrett. I represent Concord, Carlisle, Lexington, Lincoln, Waltham, and a number of additional communities here in Metro West. Each of us in our own way, everyone here this morning I know is a student of history. We all share the general conviction that there are lessons to be learned by looking to the past. But more specific events are focusing our attention. We've got an extremely important presidential election coming up next year. And soon after that, we will be planning the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Lexington and Concord, and the more formal beginning of our ongoing experiment in self-government. What makes the moment particularly poignant for me, and I know for many of you, is that many of the questions that seemed so unsettled 250 years ago apparently remain unsettled today. The question of the responsibility of a publisher concerning the accuracy and tone of what gets published, the issue of the allocation of power between the federal government and the states, and of course, the question of the accountability of powerful individuals to the rule of law. It seems as if we are destined to revisit these questions because, in their very nature, they are fundamentally unresolvable in any final sense. But it's also worth remembering that we are a young country, and one of the conditions of being young is feeling unsettled. The great questions of the 1700s and the 1800s seemed intractable at times back then, and the future is and was always unknowable. A wonderful museum like this is a kind of wondrous evocation machine, a house of associations. The materials in this lovely space will evoke for me another condition of youth, and that is optimism. Unevenly but relentlessly, the arc of history does bend toward justice, a truth of which we will always be reminded when we visit this beautiful place. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning. I'm Lori Trahan, Congresswoman Lori Trahan. It is such an honor to be here with you this morning to celebrate the unveiling of a portion of this newly renovated and redesigned permanent gallery of the Concord Museum. I have to tell you, it is such an honor to represent the diversity of this district. For those of you who might not be aware of the 37 communities that comprise the 3rd Congressional District, it's Haverhill, Lawrence, Methuen, Lowell, Andover, coming down south through Concord to Marlborough and Hudson, and as far west as Fitchburg and Gardner. And I boast about this great district all the time when I'm down in Washington, because not only are we the birth of the American Revolution, which gives me, well, I guess as someone who was born and bred in Lowell, the ability to trash talk a little bit about, about the history that has happened here, but also unbelievable revolution like the Industrial Revolution that took place right along the banks of the Merrimack River. But it is so delightful to be here today. I mean, far from the fresh coat of paint and the modern aesthetic that we're seeing in this foyer. This renovation has gone bone deep. I understand also replacing some important mechanical equipment in the 1930 building. But as this multi-phase endeavor continues, I just want to commend the dedication of the board, Tom, all the patrons who have committed themselves to the success of this museum. The roots of the Concord Museum that we know and love spread all the way back to July of 1850, when Cummings Davis founded the first iteration of this museum to mark the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Lexington and Concord. And since then, thousands have benefited from the museum's nationally significant collection. It's so enriching that there are students here from Lowell, our hometown, to enrich their historical perspective and in close proximity to the roots of our country. It is, here is where our forebears not only took up arms, but also in many cases laid down their lives for the vision of this country, a vision for a country free of tyranny and rich in personal liberties. I have the great honor to showcase two pieces from the Concord Museum in the office in Washington. One is the view of the town of Concord and the engagement at North Bridge in Concord, both from April 1775. The patriotism and sacrifice must be remembered and honored. And I'm reminded, and this is a quote that actually gets referred to plenty. I think I first heard it during my orientation at the Library of Congress. And that's the one of President John Adams, who said, "I must study politics and war, that our sons may have liberty to study mathematics and philosophy." He goes on to say, and I'll paraphrase because it's a little verbose, that his sons ought to study mathematics, philosophy, natural history, and geography in order to give their children a right to study painting, poetry, music, architecture, statuary, tapestry, and porcelain. And it is in that spirit that we are here today. This expansion and renovation invites so many people to learn more about the important and compelling role Concord played in establishing the country that we're so privileged to live in today. It provides up-close opportunities to see rare artifacts, which I'm really excited to see the powder horn carried by 21-year-old Abner Hosner, as well as the copper tea kettle used by Louisa May Alcott. And I can't wait to bring my daughters to this museum. They're aged 9 and 5. I just saw the preview for Little Women coming out later this year, and I think this is a perfect pre-movie event. But also, the New People of Muscataquid Gallery will serve as a reminder that while America was founded here, there is also the important story of Native Americans who lived here for centuries before us and have contributed so much to our country, a fact that all too often is under-discussed. Their stories must also be told and their experiences known, and hopefully someday I'll be able to bring my two colleagues, the first two Native Americans, Sharice Davids and Deb Holland, to come here to Concord so that they can see our rich history on display. So once again, along with the great Concord community, we owe a debt of gratitude to everyone who has had a hand in this new expansion. Tom, Anna, everyone who has helped. Your commitment to honoring our history and keeping it alive for so many generations, both within Concord and outside, is as honorable and as it is critical to continuing our work of perfecting our union. So thank you so much for having me here today. It is such an honor, and I look forward to many return visits. Thank you.
So we'll ask just a moment of patience while we move the podium and set up for the ribbon cutting and bring the students in from Lowell. So Anna, why don't we have you in the middle? And Congresswoman Shahan, why don't we have you next to Anna? And then Stephen, you'll come so that we're kind of aware of where we are. And let me give us scissors.
phone number, Concordia, right now, right here.
Keep coming, guys. Just helping out. Oh yeah, I should hide. I don't know where we can go to hide. Yeah, go ahead. This space over there. There's a spot over here.
Photographers, we ready? So I'll do a 1, 2, 3, and we can all say huzzah. Okay? And then we'll all cut. Carol, ready? Wait. Thank you very much. I'm on the way. All right, we ready? I'm on the way. Yeah, you want to look at well, smile. Okay, so I'll say 1, 2, 3, and please say huzzah. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Huzzah! Here we go. So you are welcome to visit the two galleries.
Okay, well, I am.
We also have a
I want to read the
drummer
language.
who's going to be performing for us
Yeah,
while we make
know, have you met my staff? Hannah Rasmussen.
You did a wonderful job.
your all attention for a second? Thank you. That's my first song. It's a real privilege to be here today. Nina Hokin Kanto Chokesiche. Wu Nasha Nutumo Manatu, Tabatni. Watuchi Kindisin, Okumis, Tabatni Wuchi Sapausi. Usakati Huna, Notas Ninawa Manantio. King Nuta Yu Pantamino. And the mayo Ninawa Mequantam Kicha. Ka Mata Wananta. Ka Nabutia Kukuta Ninawa. Manatu. Usakati Huna. Womaneta Dio. Ka Nosotomusu Amoke. Nino Kankanto Chokesiche. Nihayo. I greet you in the words of this land, in my Algonquin language of the Nipmuc people, and I thank you all for being here today on this land that we have lived here for thousands of years. So it's a real treat to be a part of this exhibit and this very festive day with all of you. And I kind of end up here as happenstance, kind of like on short notice, but it's a real treat to get called to events such as this and to share in this very valuable and important time for everybody. A little bit about me in English. My name is Larry Spotted Crow Man. I'm a cultural educator. I'm a writer. Also, I'm a teacher in Grafton, Massachusetts. So I spend a lot of time with young people, and the most important thing I like to say to young people, I do a lot of work with drug and alcohol prevention, so it's really key. And some of the things I like to teach young people is that I've traveled all over the world on my book tours. And you never have to have a drink or a drug to have a good time. That's one of the first things I always like to say that's very important. And secondly, I always like to remind people about this land, where it's been, and acknowledge this space that we're in. That people have lived here for a very long time. They raised their families here. They practice all kinds of cosmology, intellectual curiosity, science, philosophy, spiritual practices, and many different things that was mentioned earlier. And also, a few names I'd like to mention too, such as Metacom, Mudawamp, King Philip, and some other people who have been here and who have fought bravely. And also, having said it, when we think about the military, one fact I'd just like to mention before I finish singing, Native American people are the highest enlisted in the U.S. military per ratio. So, given their population, they enlist more than any other group in the U.S. military. And what's even more really special on my part, I am a son of the Revolutionary War. My great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, Samson Hazard, was a Revolutionary War soldier. And then further up the line, my great-great-great-grandfathers were Civil War veterans, several of his brothers and and there's a great book about them called From Mashantucket to Appomattox. You can get that book down at the Pequot Museum, and also you can get my books at whisperingbasket.com. And I have a couple here I'm going to get to the museum they can have as well. And so, again, it's a real treat to be here, and I want to share this song. It's called the Nipmuc Healing Song, and it kind of brings everybody together. And I was also really pleased to see my little cousin Brittany Wally has a basket display in there, so that's really neat. And again, you young folks, it's very important to remember what you see here today and what you learn here today, because as we travel through the museum, we're also seeing things out of context. So when we see things a little out of context, we really can't get that full flavor. So as the people who have had that shared and lived experience, we're able to kind of articulate what that meant to us and what these things still mean to us today from both sides of the spectrum. So with that, I'm going to share this Nipmuc Healing Song. This drum, as we call it, is, what's that sound like to you? Heartbeat. Heartbeat. It is the heartbeat of the people. So I would just ask everybody to do one short thing. Could you look to the person to your left? Sir, your other left. Now, look to the person to your right. Thank you. Now, what you may notice is that they may not be the same gender, they may not be the same color, they may not have the same kind of hair, or they may not have hair. But on the inside, we're all doing this. And this is where we connect at the heart. And this is a vision of my ancestors and the vision I share with you all today.
Thank you all for coming. I want to thank the Pipe and Drum Corps as well. Please enjoy the exhibit. Larry will be performing some other songs later, but please come and come see the new gallery and do it. Hey, Lori. Hi.